If you're searching for how to get into cybersecurity with no experience, or wondering why your certification isn't landing you a job, you're not alone. Now, the truth is, the industry is obsessed with talent shortage, yet we're routinely being blocked, and brilliant individuals are stopped and pushed out of the industry because of paywalls and biased hiring filters. Today, we're addressing the gatekeepers head on. We're tackling the BS, and we're sitting down with one of the co-founders of CyBlack. We're also going to be talking about the human element and the human infrastructure needed to survive the job hunt, silent imposter syndrome, and of course, building your own table when other doors are closed. Simbiat, welcome to Secure Cyber Connect, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Aaron. Good to be here.
That's great. And look, myself and Jay, we're strong advocates for equality. We constantly see a big gap between corporate diversity statements and actual lived experience. And I feel it's something, of course, that's going to resonate with you also and much of our audience. So we're keen to get a better understanding of your history. You know, when the breaking point actually set in, was there a specific moment or frustration that made you stop waiting for the industry to open the doors and you realized that you need to come together with other individuals to build CyBlack itself?
I mean, that's such an interesting question. I get asked a couple of times, and building CyBlack was really a sort of like a realization that you really don't have to wait for someone else to bridge, setting gap when you can, just build the kind of community that you want. So the inspiration for CyBlack really came from experience of myself and my co-founders, many of whom sort of like moved countries across Europe and were building their careers in cybersecurity. And a lot of conversation stems from, you talk to people, you hear that, oh yeah, I'm trying to study cybersecurity, but I also acknowledge that just having this degree is not enough. Like I have that fear of, so what's next, right? What do I do? And I think it's more dicey for these people, being in like new environments, new community. And it's also like, similar experience for my co-founders as well. And it just feels like there was like a lot of conversation around diversity, but we also strongly believe that representation is very, very important, but it needs to be backed by capability and experience. So we're not saying, oh, because you need to fill a certain quota with Black people or with certain, diverse community, you're just going to hire people who don't have the experience. So I think the question for us was, what can we do, right, differently? And that's really where CyBlack comes in as a community where we are connecting people to like practical skills, gain real world experience, learn from others, and just navigate similar journey with like-minded people. And yeah, that's really how CyBlack was born. It's simply just a simple idea to say how can we create opportunities, provide mentorship, and just help people unlock that potential while getting hands-on experience.
And Jim and myself have been following the community's journey for some years. We've met some of the co-founders and they've joined us on the pod in the past. So we do commend you all for your hard work. We certainly see the impact at grassroots level also. But looking back over the last 5 years, we've been building out this ecosystem. What's the harshest reality that underrepresented talent is still facing today? And how is the community actively shielding them from that?
I think one of the harshest reality really for underrepresented talent is still access. So when I say access, I mean access to opportunities, access to professional networks, to mentors, and just that industrial exposure that help them progress. And we've met like very talented people over the years that have all of the skills, all of determination to succeed, but they can't find the right room to be in. They can't find like the right support system. And through CyBlack, we're creating this space, this access, because I think there's something about you feeling sort of like displaced in certain places. So you want that, community to sort of like support you and just feel like, oh, someone has been there before me, right? It means I can do it. And I wouldn't really say we're shielding people from that challenge, really, because those challenges still exist. And I think they're going to exist for a very long time. I think what we're trying to do is help them overcome those challenges with the right support system and basically just, giving them that support system to aid their journey, and giving them that community to be a part of, and for them to feel like there are people who are genuinely invested in their growth and also their experience. And over the years, really, we've seen people build their confidence. We've seen people, secure their first jobs. In fact, we've seen people grow so much that they come back to give back to the community in the sense of, I want to mentor people in the community. How can I support? What can I do? And for me, that's like, real impact.
And look, yeah, Simbiat, there's no denying that this has been a very interesting couple of years in the cyber job market. There's been a huge amount of change, and there's a collective, sometimes unspoken exhaustion across the industry now. A lot of career professionals, and certainly people who maybe at the I guess the less senior side of the market are very much running on certification treadmill, which I think they were encouraged to do for so long, and that was always the way. But it really now feels like a lot of people are just hitting an impasse or a brick wall because they've just not got that valuable and always seemingly required practical experience. So how do we sort of collectively dismantle this clearly flawed and to some degrees, it feels somewhat unfair career pathway?
Um, I think there's been like a lot of conversations about certifications in the industry for the longest time. And I think the first step is really acknowledging that certifications and having like that real life experience or hands-on experience, they're not really competing things. They're sort of like complementary, right? And that's because for certifications, they're like very valuable because you're showing, potential employers, you're showing people that you have the knowledge, right? You have the commitment and willingness because to learn, because there's so much effort, so much time, that goes into learning, preparing for certifications and all that. But ultimately, cybersecurity is a practical field, right? And employers wants to see, at least they want you to demonstrate that you can apply this knowledge you've learned in teams, in real life environment to solve problems. And I think the challenge that many aspiring professionals also face is they're caught in that cycle where they're told, you need experience to get a job, and then you need a job to get experience. So it feels like an unending cycle, right? And breaking this cycle really requires a collective effort. And as individuals, as organization, as community, we need to create more pathways really for people to get hands-on experience. I mean, this can be through internship, mentorship programs, labs, competitions, volunteering, open source, just anything that makes, people who are interested in the field sort of like have that feel of what it really looks like, to have this hands-on experience. I know there are like a lot of platforms really that sort of like support this learning, but some of them are like quite expensive really for people who are trying to get into the industry. So it's sort of like very dicey. But one of the reasons why we launched the internship program at CyBlack is because of this gap, right? We want people to be able to get this hands-on experience. I also think that as aspiring professionals, they need to recognize that getting hands-on experience is not really about getting a full-time job, right? You can build experience from participating in Capture the Flag, contributing to like community initiatives, volunteering, like so many things. I've had people volunteer for like, CyBlack or communities I've been in, and I've seen the amount of like skills they've gotten from it. Probably something as little as, being part of, the setup for our internship program. It gives you that real life, insight on, oh, so this is what happens, when you need to like develop for policies. This is what happens when you need to sort of like, carry out like threat intelligence. Like it sounds very basic from the outside, but just having that in like inside experience does like something very different to your career. So I think it's also very important for everyone to acknowledge that. But ultimately, as professionals, right, as a community, we recognize the fact that there's a gap. It means we need to be very intentional about giving up people this opportunity, like giving people this pathway to learning. I mean, people are not going to magically acquire experience, right? We just need to create these opportunities for them, and it just helps us build stronger ecosystem, more inclusive workforce, and a very resilient cybersecurity ecosystem as well.
And look, there's plenty of people out there, and I'm sure many people who watch the pod and listen to the pod, who will feel very isolated. They'll be studying, putting in a lot of hard miles, and then ultimately sending their resumes out into this, what has been undoubtedly a very difficult job market, almost a void, if you will, if you're not getting responses. What's the most critical first step that these people really, I guess, who are in that situation must take to build their professional, human, and mental development? Because I know this is exactly the kind of practical, community-driven guidance that you guys drive home a lot, and certainly we'll be discussing a lot at the upcoming CyBlack Conference. But for those people watching this episode, where do they start?
I think my simple advice is going to be, first, you need to stop trying to do it alone, right? So one of the biggest mistake that aspiring professionals tend to make, and I think I've been there before, is just thinking about, oh, I need to get like technical knowledge, I need to learn technical skills, lock yourself in a room, try to learn how to hack, try to learn all of the frameworks, the policies, and everything in between. But while these skills are really, really important, you cannot build your career alone. You need people, you need relationships, you need community. So if you're studying alone, applying for jobs alone, you're not hearing back, you're feeling stuck, the first place for you to start is take a step back, find a community or create one. Like I like to tell people, you don't need to find a community, find 1-2% who sort of like they're like on the same journey as you, and come up with, I don't know, plans, sessions, brainstorming, whatever it is, just something that makes you get perspective from people. And really, like I said, you don't need like hundreds of people, just one conversation, you need one mentor, whatever it is, right, to help you. And I remember having this conversation with someone like a couple of years ago. He reached out to me on Twitter, and his message was something around, I've been learning a lot, but I think I'm missing something. I'm missing support. I'm missing community. And all he had to get was a community. And in less than a year, he got his first job. And this is like real life experience, right? He's actually really good. Like he learned so much by just, trying to like lock in and do a lot of things. But he knew that there was no way for him to do it alone. And this is where like community comes in. And I often tell people, right, opportunities in cybersecurity tend to flow through networks. I've gotten a lot of jobs from referrals, right? Case saying, oh, someone is trying to hire. I'd be like, oh, hey, Simbiat, I think I'm trying to hire for this role. I'm going to think about people in my network first before I start thinking about, are there like people who have like experience otherwise, right? So the more you engage with the community, the more you sort of like learn about opportunities, the more you gain insights from people about probably something you've been doing wrong, need to fix, and also this relationship, these conversations help you grow. So if you're listening today and you're feeling isolated, I think my challenge for you is this: don't spend the next week or the next month studying alone, or applying for a job alone. Join a community, attend an event, reach out to one person, start a conversation, whatever it might be, no matter how small, but just find someone or people or community that you can, work with, learn from, and it's going to make a lot of difference for you.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of almost sort of, I suppose to some degree, is probably a similar answer to my next question. I mean, look, the mental resilience, it's key. It's key for everybody, I think, in the workplace. When you do get into a room where maybe no one's taking any notice of you, the loudest voice could often be your own self-doubt, as many people call it, imposter syndrome. A lot of people out there are battling that crippling anxiety, feeling a bit lost. Again, we obviously know the importance of community, but what other practical advice could you give for silencing those negative voices that are owning that headspace?
I find imposter syndrome very interesting because you're always going to feel like it's because you're just starting, that's why you're feeling certain way, feeling like you're not enough or you need to do more. But one thing I've learned over the years and also from speaking with my mentors is that imposter syndrome doesn't disappear, right? It never does. Like you reach a certain job title or a certain path in your career, and then something else comes up. Like it just evolves. And when you realize that even the people you admire sort of like experience like this too, it gives you some certain level of comfort. And that's why I like to share about how I'm feeling with people that's been there before me. And just hearing them say, oh yeah, I used to feel this, I'm like, oh okay. Or hearing them say, oh, I still feel this, I'm like, oh okay. I mean, just means I'm not alone, right? So my advice when it comes to treating self-doubt is that more often than not, it's really just an evidence that you're growing, because you're not going to doubt yourself if you know everything, right? You know exactly what you need to do or you know exactly where you are. It's just a case of when you start stepping into new environment, things that challenge you, start doubting yourself. And when you walk into rooms where you feel different or out of place, I think it is very important to remind yourself that you did not get into that room by accident. Like you did not end those qualifications by accident. You had sleepless nights, right? You had to put in a lot of either financial, physical, mental energy into getting those certifications. You did not get those experiences by accident. You've worked years for it, you've made mistakes, and basically you've worked for these opportunities. And I also sort of like encourage people to focus less on trying to prove themselves and more on trying to learn. So there's something about when your goal is really about learning, right? You tend to ask questions and then contribute where you can. So it reduces this pressure of having to like prove yourself, because your goal is really, oh, I really want to learn, right? And when you get opportunity to share like your own experiences or maybe your own sort of like knowledge, you just share and then you just speak and share. So it's just really easy. And another thing that's really helped me is knowing that for you to build confidence, you have to keep doing. You have to keep at it no matter how nervous you feel, no matter how you feel like, oh, I'm out of place. First you need to be there, you need to sit down in that room to build that confidence. So it's really about like taking those actions, little actions. The more events you attend, the more people you talk to, the more you build self-confidence. But yes, you're going to start having, syndrome from maybe something else that's in vogue. Maybe now there's AI security and you're like, oh God, what's it about? Like, okay, now I'm lost. But then just remind yourself that there was a new framework, a new regulation 2 years ago that you had absolutely no idea about. And right now you're sitting down, like doing so much, right, about implementing those frameworks, talking to people about it and learning so much about it as well. And finally is really, I'm just a very big fan of community. Like it does really help your confidence. It does help, having people around you, to talk to listen and have context about their own experience as well. So I think for me, to anyone like struggling with imposter syndrome, I think my only message is really don't wait until you feel confident to take a seat at that table. Sit there first, take a deep breath, and let the confidence catch up with you later.
Absolutely. And I mean, look, just following on from that, because I think, most people tend to feel that they need to say yes to every single project just to kind of justify their worth and maybe get a foot in the door, enhance their career. And God knows, Warren and I can testify to saying yes to everything all the time, and to our own detriment. But when does saying yes become toxic to your own mental health? And how do you learn to say no without the fear of maybe it having an impact on your career?
I think that's a very tricky question, and that's because personally, I believe that early in your career, it is very important to say yes when you get opportunities, right? And that's because you're just starting out, right? You want to take as much as you can, you want to volunteer, you want to learn, you want to take on like new challenges, just really step outside of your comfort zone. However, I also think that it is very important to create healthy boundaries, right? And for me, one of these boundaries is my health. Like, I don't joke with my health. And if I feel like something is consistently like affecting my physical or mental well-being, I know it is time to like take a step back and then reassess, right? And I think the hardest part is learning really to say no without feeling like, oh God, I'm about to lose an opportunity to maybe grow or learn something new. And it's really sort of like a mindset shift that I sort of like have to build over the years. Um, and I've also learned that if you think your place, right, either in your organization or at the table, as the case might be, is really dependent on you constantly having to say yes, it means you are really going to like exceed your boundary, you're going to get burnt out. And really, what's the point of you sitting at a table or having to own maybe like a very huge project you think you're going to make a lot of impact on when you don't have capacity, right, to do it? Because reality is, when you say yes, it comes with a lot of cost, especially if you have like so much already doing. It may cost you your time, your energy, maybe no time for your family, your friends. And that's why it's so intentional for you to, think about opportunities you take. And for me, if I take on opportunities to say like yes to things, ask myself like, what's the goal? Right? Do I have capacity for this? How does this, align with my values? I mean, there's a time where I volunteered so much. People didn't believe I had a full-time job. Like, I was volunteering so much. And I think it was easier to do because I had like assessed myself. I knew what my limit was. I know how many hours I was working Monday to Friday. I know how many hours I had to sort of like, give, to volunteering. But I think the most important thing is you need to protect yourself, and you need to also like, be able to protect yourself, just so when the right opportunity come, you can take them. Because if you keep saying yes and yes and yes, you're going to take like even the ones that really not like aligned with where you're heading to or your values, and then when the right one comes, you just don't have, space for it. So you really just have to like consider where your boundaries are, where your values are, and really what are you trying to achieve.
Absolutely. Warren, I think we've answered the next question as part of that. So into you, please, if you would.
And that's some fascinating points there. Appreciate you sharing, Simbiat. And look, we seeded this earlier in the conversation. Let's talk directly about the room in Preston in August, CyBlack's conference. Your theme this year is solving tomorrow's cyber challenges together. So beyond standard networking, what does that togetherness look like in practice? How career shifting is this for those that are in the audience? What should they expect throughout the day?
From a career perspective, togetherness means bringing cybersecurity professionals, industry leaders, organization, and also like allies in the same space, and just creating opportunities for conversation. We want people to walk into that conference, looking for career advice and coming out with a mentor. We also want people, to come into that environment and sort of like have a feel of what diverse perspective means. I think we're going to have like, a lot of Black people in the room from different background, different industries with different experiences. And really what makes a Black event really special to me is that we're very intentional about creating opportunities, right, for connection, and sort of like conversations we sort of like have planned for events around simulations, just having a feel about, what certain things are, not just, hearing about them, just having a feel of what it's about. And we think this really shapes, people, because one thing I've learned is sometimes the basic we think are really not necessary, are like things that people don't even really know about. So what we're trying to do for this year's conference is, yes, we're talking about obviously the buzzing world right now. AI definitely is going to be part of the event. We're also thinking about how do we sort of like bring cybersecurity to non-technical people, right? So it's very easy for them to understand. So shared experiences, like opportunity to engage, interact, and this is really what this year's conference is for us. So that kind of like togetherness, we're hoping that people get to experience when they join us in Preston this August.
Well, that's brilliant. And of course, I've attended and supported previous conferences. Me and Jay are going to be joining you as co-hosts, which we're really thankful for. It's great to finally meet you in person. But you mentioned allies and advocates. This isn't a closed event. You're welcome into other communities, people from different walks of life. What do you want to say directly to those potential people that are sat on the fence and think that this event is closed when ultimately it's open to everyone, isn't it?
So the conference is really so CyBlack Conference. Yeah, CyBlack was built around supporting like Black people, but for the conference itself is really for anyone who cares about the future of cybersecurity, whether you're a student, you're a professional, you're experienced, you're a leader, an employer, and an ally. And if I had to describe the unique value of this conference, I would just say, aside from the technical content, I mean, there are like so many places you can learn about cybersecurity when it comes to technicals. For me, is personally, I've never seen community where people are so genuinely invested in helping each other succeed. Like that's community we're building, and not because they have to, but because they genuinely want to. And over the years, I've watched people, share opportunities at the events. I've watched people even try to review people's CVs at the event. I'm like, you're not a recruiter. You're just like a practitioner. Like, why are you so invested in a stranger's like growth? And that's sort of like, kind of community we're building. That's like kind of like event we're having. So there'll be conversations around emerging technologies, evolving threats, and all of the challenges around it. So I believe that people walk away with not just knowledge. By people, I mean every single person that comes to that conference, but also relationships, perspective, and just a sense of belonging. That I mean, this is really something big, and these are like kind of impact we are hoping to see as an outcome of the conference.
And Jay, why are conferences and events such as this so important for the industry, and what are you looking forward to in particular, Jay?
Well, I mean, look, we've been very, very, I guess, entrenched in the event space for a good few years now. And obviously, I think, as Warren touched on, the power of our podcast has always been about diversity, equity, inclusion. We're very proud of the fact that our guests have come from a wide range of backgrounds. And, we've obviously really wanted to focus on topics that weren't necessarily being discussed. And I think sometimes events can often be these things can be discussed at events, but the message isn't necessarily getting through into the workplace as vigorously as it should. So I think we're looking forward, obviously, to being part of it. And obviously, as Warren said, it's a chance for us to really, hopefully, support the message and discuss topics like we've discussed on this episode. And obviously look at, the future and how we can really help people get into the job market. There's a lot gone on, a lot's changed. AI has changed the landscape for sure. For good in many ways, maybe for bad in many other ways. So I think people now have to be aware about sort of the right skills, the right certification, the right training, cross-training into jobs that will make them of value going forward. Because I think the markets are picking up, no question. I think 2026 has definitely been the most buoyant year since 2023. And I think that we're going to have another 4 or 5 year digital transformation boom. There's no question of that. So it's about positioning the people within the communities, respective communities, and CyBlack, obviously, in terms of this particular conversation, making sure they've got the right skills alongside the right approach to make them optimal and attractive to the job market. So it's an exciting time, and hopefully we can discuss a lot about at the conference and meet, obviously, some people that we're familiar with, and obviously people that we haven't met before, and really discuss these type of approaches and how people can maximise their job search.
I appreciate you sharing, Jay. And Simbiat, we want to speak directly to leaders and organisations watching this conversation today. So if you want to address them directly, what's your one challenge for them? How do they move from performance art and logo placement to actually partnering with CyBlack from a long-term perspective to drive generable, measurable equality across the sector?
So My challenge to them is simple, and that's if we want to close the cybersecurity skills gap, we need to invest in the people who will shape it. I mean, we often talk about the skills back so much, there's talent shortage, we need stronger workforce, we need people who have like the experience. But solving this challenge requires organizations like yours to actively support communities and initiatives like ours that are developing talents and creating opportunities. And we've gotten so much feedback from organizations that says, oh, we just hired someone from CyBlack and they are doing such an amazing, amazing job. And for me, partnership really goes beyond, sponsorship, and it's really about how can you as an organization, right, work alongside communities like ours to create meaningful pathways into the profession. Is it, knowledge sharing? Is it long-term support? And as a charity organization, we are incredibly like grateful, to every organization who supported, the work that we do. But I'd like to also encourage like leaders to see that, support for us is really an investment in the future of cybersecurity workforce and in long term, the industry in general. And reality is that, people attending events today could be like cybersecurity leaders, analysts, consultants, but they are definitely like CISOs of tomorrows, they're directors of tomorrows. So, in a nutshell, my challenge is simple. Don't just talk about the future of cybersecurity, support communities to build it, invest in talent, support initiatives that create opportunities, and play an active role in developing the next generation of cybersecurity professionals.
And location, I know you've moved over the last couple of years in terms of, the locations that you use, and that's down to the growth of the community itself and those supporting. Tell us about the date and location.
Yeah, the conference will be happening at Preston, and it's August 20th, 2026. That's less than 60 days away. And yeah, we're so excited about it. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Simbiat. Look, it's clear that individuals like yourself and the expertise you bring are exactly what this industry needs much, much more of. As co-founder of CyBlack, Simbiat Sadiq isn't just driving the vision. She's an absolute powerhouse in security operations, in cloud, and of course in the GRC space. And she's been very much one of the driving forces executing the CyBlack Conference over the last 4 years. These people are not just talking about building pathways, they're blueprint. If the content on today's episode and the conversations resonated with you, then certainly don't let it end here. Make sure you connect with Simbiat, Fabisola, Dr. Erie, Jude, the entire CyBlack community. They can all be found on LinkedIn, and obviously we'll be looking forward to speaking with these guys much more effectively and personally in the conference, and hopefully we can unpack more of what we've discussed on the episode today. But yeah, feel free to reach out to everyone outlined. They'd love to hear from you. In this August for the CyBlack Conference. If you're tired of standard networking, if what you've heard today resonates and you want to build that genuine professional infrastructure, this is where you need to be. And finally, to all the leaders, organizations and sponsors watching, you've heard the challenge today. We've got to move past this performative support. So reach out to Warren, myself, or any of the CyBlack team. Get involved. Let's start solving tomorrow's cyber challenges together. Links to connect, register, and sponsor will be in the description below. If you found this of value, be sure to like, subscribe, and share to empower others. Simbiat, thank you so much. It's been fascinating. It's been great to meet with you, and we very much look forward to further engagement going forward.
Thank you, Jay, and thank you to Warren. It was great to be here.